And when the president said COVID was done, I personally knew that it was done. And I don't really care what other people say, like a lack of producer, the background's changing. Who knew? I mean, it could just be anything happens today, you know? It's
I
just,
feel this. When you
um,
said we were going to have an O'Reilly moment today, I thought you meant books. I thought we were
books.
going to
No,
books.
we don't need adults, okay? Like I'm
No,
figuring this out, Mick.
we're
I'm
doing
just
it
gonna.
live.
I'm doing it
The
live.
other
The
O'Reilly.
backgrounds are
Okay,
changing.
that's what you
Yep.
meant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like we don't need no Drew or Ali in our lives to make this show work.
Supervision, especially the last
Technology.
one.
You know,
Everyone
I know how to
watching should be
use.
very concerned at this point. We have no
Listen,
producer.
the point here
But
is like
we'll
Like,
get
I
through.
know like I'm in the background here. I'm in the back office. I have my bucket. I got my mop. I got the data. Like we're pushing it around. We're figuring out how this works. Like it's fine. Everything's
It'll
fine.
be fine. If not, like, who's going to watch it except everyone watching now on the internet in perpetuity? So,
Well,
with
no
that,
one
welcome
on
to
the
Coffee
internet
Talk.
has ever given poor feedback for unprofessionalism.
Never.
Never. Speaking of unprofessionalism, my name is James Brodsky. This is Mick Baccio and Audra Streetman, and we want to thank everyone for joining us today. As you may have noticed from the very unfunny banter, unfortunately, we are doing this by ourselves today. So if you see some unnormal, that's not even a word.
It's not
irregular,
magic, folks. There's
Abnormal.
a
yeah,
team behind the
yeah,
scenes.
things, our little elves are gone, you know, and yeah,
We're just gonna go with it.
we're just
Something will
gonna go with
happen.
it.
Yep.
Doesn't matter that they're not there. It doesn't matter if you're distracted. Like the point here is we have wonderful people to talk about things that I've totally prepared for, thanks to
Totally
Audra.
prepared. And if you are 3 baguettes high and are looking for a production job, you just give me a ring.
Absolutely. It's going to go great. Everything is going to be wonderful. As always, we're here for 35 to 55 minutes as the spirit takes us, depending on what news we have for the day. You know, we all have coffee. Mick, what are you drinking today?
I am.
If it
I
stirs
don't
in your
know. I
fire.
picked it up from Harris Teeter in my
What's the mug? What's the mug?
Oh, it's my I can see best Korea from my house.
I
My
like it.
master hacker coffee mug.
Who would have
Thank you
made
very
that
much.
for you? I just can't imagine.
I know, she's so sweet. She loves me.
Yeah, that's true. Audra, no coffee today?
No coffee.
Just
Yeah,
cold
I
meds?
was just Tylenol today for me. I have a head
I have
cold.
my
It's a bottle of Robitussin. This should be fine in about a half hour.
I got my serious organized crime agency mug from my time when I was working in the UK Home Office. London's been on my mind a lot lately, especially in the heat of Dallas. So it's a kind reminder.
How
there.
hot is it in Dallas?
How hot is it?
Is hail hot? Hail's not hot.
Kale? K-A-L?
Hail is ice.
No, there was a fair amount of hail your way, wasn't it?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the winter vegetables. Like, I don't think kale is ever hot. I don't care what Big Kale has told you. It is just not a sexy vegetable. Yeah, Rick Holland, friend of the show. He had a car destroyed by golf ball size hail.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I thankfully no hail today. Often they do go hand in hand though, those extreme temperatures. So
see, I saw tornado movies.
Should we get going with the news?
Oh God, what is wrong with you? You know, here we are wandering, trying to avoid work.
Just trying to keep us on track here.
Audra comes back from vacation, and suddenly it's all work this and all work that. I know, I get it. Audra, just for you.
Thank you. All right, we're off to a good start.
We should warn people ahead of time. We do not have the bandwidth because of the Russians to show video. Or
bandwidth, we mean production crew.
Well, I'm going to share the links to the articles that I'll talk about.
Okay.
So here's the first one. This is a story from Reuters reporting that a number of former and current SolarWinds executives recently received a Wells notice from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. And this is about the big SolarWinds breach back in 2020, which was tied to its Orion software product. And so Wells notices, if you're not familiar, they're intended to notify firms that the SEC is planning to bring enforcement action against them. So a SolarWinds spokesperson responded in this article with Reuters and said the company acted properly at all times in response to that. massive data breach. And in November of last year, actually, SolarWinds also received a Wells notice from the SEC alleging that the company violated U.S. securities law with respect to its cybersecurity disclosures and public statements, as well as its internal control and disclosure controls and procedures. So this isn't the first time we've heard of a Wells notice, but it is interesting that the executives and former executives have received another one, indicating that there could be some sort of enforcement action, whatever that would be.
Yeah, beloved co-host of the show, Christine Payne, and I were just having a conversation about this last week around Uber, and how this compares. And Mick, as the only person I think on the show who's formerly held a CISO title, how do you feel about this? I mean, had you been indicted or accused of malevolence
Allegedly.
allegedly
Well,
during
he was
the Mayor Pete campaign?
um,
Coffee talk.
it's interesting, and I don't think the context is similar enough to Uber to compare the two. It's like apples and peaches, I guess. But that being said, against SolarWinds, it's odd because it's not because of the compromise and because of the, say what you will about the security posture before the incident. It's kind of the follow-on and the response actions and the coordination of the public statements, which I think may have been out of bounds, which in hindsight, I'm sure you could do. But to me, it feels like there has to be a hammer dropped for a reason. And this seems like a good enough reason for any.
I am fascinated by the personal liability or culpability aspect of it, kind of as it continues to go.
That's the thing. Like, I don't think you can it's a nation state intelligence gathering operation. Exactly what were you going to do?
But at the same time, if you're a company and you advertise your cybersecurity to be one way, could that then be a violation of U.S. securities law? I don't know. I mean, is that if you advertise, right? Like if you state that this is your level of security, or if you are found to have not met that level that you claim to have in place before an incident happens. I mean,
And
could
that's what
that
I'm
be?
not sure about
Yeah.
is the statements that they have, exactly, the disclosures and the public statements. I'm not sure exactly what those were that kind of got them in the hot water. But certainly it can't be for like, hey, we may have gotten popped by a Russian intelligence gathering operation and our source code was compromised and distributed to a lot of people. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a good point to point out. We have some lovely guests today sending some chats in. Keep them coming. It's really nice to see everyone. And yes, Ami, we are already having fun as always. Latoya asking, what kind of coffee are you guys drinking today? Colombian, Peruvian, etc. I am drinking the finest from an aluminum pod that came out of my thing upstairs because my nicer coffee maker is downstairs. Mick, you have a local Baltimore roastery, or is this your normal like instant coffee?
So I may have been in a rush and didn't have any coffee. So I went to the local, personal gift from my friends at Harris Teeter for the small price of however much it cost. And it smelled really good. And I wish it tasted as good as it smelled, but I may have brewed it wrong.
So
it's great.
This is a perfect segue back to our conversation about false advertising. We never victim blame, right? Like what happened to SolarWinds, really hard, novel attack.
No, I probably screwed up making coffee too, so nothing on Harris Teeter. Yeah.
You're not going to get sued by yourself for poor coffee making decisions. I don't know. I do think that there's the thread here to pull. Like I said, kind of what Kirsty and I were talking about is really around how CISOs are treated through these events, and what that means longer term as precedent starts getting set. And there has been precedent set in the last 3 years in the U.S. legal system, to be very Americentric as we often are on this show. But there's been legal precedent set around board of directors not paying enough attention via subcommittees or oversight of organizations specifically around ransomware. What I find interesting about both of these is neither of them were ransomware.
Yeah. Would you argue that the traditional role of the CISO is, hey, you are the CISO, we're going to string along, fair to middling security until something bad happens, you're going to fall on that sword and they're going to replace you?
I don't think that was the intent, but I think that's where we've ended up, right?
But I think that's changing. Do you?
Well, when there's
because
extra
of
liability, right? Like legal.
because of these new introductions, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely changing. And hopefully that's a good incentive, right? I mean, that could be the whole point behind this, is to make an example, right?
I think a
Plus,
couple
I'm
years
not
ago,
personally
right?
responsible for a compromise as the CISO, right? It's just
Yeah.
I didn't click on that recruiting email. What do you want me to do?
Well, and I would love to look back like 10 years ago when the dwell time for an adversary was like 2 or 3 years and see what the dwell time for a CISO was, because I bet you it was probably less time. Like you were more likely to be in a network longer as an adversary than a CISO. Not sure if that data works, but I love that as a headline for someone somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. I think that this is, we often get into the technical weeds, but I do think the legislative aspect, as always, regulatory, compliance, and legislative actually change security way more than anything I've ever done on a keyboard.
Security,
Well,
the world, anything
yeah.
else really,
And-
legislation and policy kind of.
Diana raises a good point also in the chat for LinkedIn. She says, isn't there a thing in some fields where it's more profitable to just do it, pay the fines, the lawsuits, than just to be safe to begin with? And that's another question. How much is the security
when you
costing?
say some fields, I think you mean all of them. It's
Well, I mean, it's that risk, cost analysis,
is-
right?
Going
Uh-oh.
back, we
Are we
talked
doing-
about
is
this
we-
a couple weeks ago, right? The NIS2 compliance and
have we shifted to a business podcast?
Yeah, let's
Wait
go
for
ahead.
Coffee Talk with Surge by Business. It'll be great.
Yeah,
So,
we have
our
great
hottest new
insight on
startup.
that.
Yeah. Watch this space.
Next story. So I'm going to go ahead and share this in the chat as well. This is a Cyberscoop story about a hack and leak operation targeting the Iranian government. So since May 29th, more than 100 documents related to the office, or purportedly related to the office of the president of Iran and other major government organizations, were leaked on a Telegram channel called Gayam Senegoni, which translates in Farsi to uprising until overthrow. And the documents, they include diplomatic correspondence, floor plans, network diagrams, information about the country's nuclear program, even details of officials routing money through Chinese banks to evade sanctions. And there's another group that's called the Mujahideen-e-Khalq, or MEK, which has defaced government websites in Iran. And they've also claimed to have gained control over 120 servers and databases and more than 1,300 computers connected to the presidency's internal network. And it's so far unclear if MEK is connected to this Telegram channel, but Iran is calling this hack false. Cyberscoop, however, reports that there are outside experts who believe these documents and the hack are likely legitimate. So that's a lot of really good intelligence if it is.
Have they thought about having a biographer talk to them, record it, say it's off the record, and then just have the Iranians confirm it and ask for a Diet Coke?
It's an original thought,
they
Ryan.
did.
But
They did, and that is actually stored in a different building.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm unsure of Tehranese? I don't know. What is a citizen of
Tehran?
Tehran?
Iranian? I just mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Toilet facilities are like in terms of storage capabilities.
Fair.
The hard question.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's some interesting. There's several groups. I remember there was that Sparrow group. Do you remember that?
Interesting is one word. I think if you are part of MOIS or IRGC or any part of the Iranian government right now, you're not having a great day. This would be like that. The start of, let's say, a Snowden or a Manning level leak of intelligence data about your government. This is very, very high level data, and it looks to be confirmed. AJ did a great job on this report, and the piece is fantastic. And I think the way it reads is that there's more data to be released.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if the smart egg being the smart egg is to give this data to somebody else who can leverage it for something that you'd like to see done. And it sounds like overthrowing, which I guess if you're in that region is not new.
I mean, you have to pick your date. I prefer multiples of 3s for my dates for overthrowing governments. That's the primary. But I find it interesting because, we were talking earlier. One of the things that we threw out that apparently I'm going to throw back in to make it extra spicy today because I'm feeling spicy. We were discussing the BBC article around why doesn't the media cover Western hacking groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this doesn't tie in, but it kind of does, right? Like this is the hacking, or like when you start looking at attacking foreign governments, like what the motivations are behind it, where they kind of go through. I don't know. It's interesting. It's a way to kind of go out there.
Yeah, and then false flags too, right? A country purporting to be another country to, confuse whether or not that's Five Eyes, or is it an Iranian group behind this? I mean, until you have like concrete attribution, it's hard to really say for sure. But
I don't think you'll ever get concrete attribution.
Exactly. That's kind of an oxymoron. Concrete attribution don't really go together. But you know what I'm saying? To have some form of attribution where you can say with some confidence that it's some.
Yeah, I mean, Jags and Brian, right? Jags, friend of the show, author in the Blue Nomicon behind Mick's head. When they were at Kaspersky, they had a great presentation. Definitely, although they use Prezi, which makes my head want to hurt and throw up.
Yes.
But they have a phenomenal presentation on false flag attribution of Russian groups or other groups trying to plant APT1 and APT3 and stuff like that throughout the malware to confuse people. I mean, it's certainly possible. It's, at least for me, that's when I first started looking at this. That's kind of where my head went, was just like, is it that obvious, or is it that obvious because somebody pointed it out, or does it even matter because the secrets are out and they seem to be confirmed? And where was
But that's the thing is, once you see an operation, once you hear about something happening and there is a publicly available or even moderately publicly available sample of that malware, it's going to get repurposed and reused by anyone with that capability because it's proven effectiveness. So we see it every time there's a 0 day. A bunch of actors will jump on that train and start using it. And I think we'll keep seeing that. And that just adds to that murkiness. Audrey, you were talking about the attribution end of it. That only, does nothing but murky those waters even more.
We talked last time, 2 weeks ago, I guess, about, North Korea and the stack ranking that's kind of happened over the years of adversaries. And, I think we've said this a lot, but like when I started my career for nation state threat hunting, it was kind of like, if you saw Havij and Acumedics, and it was just like blatant, it was obviously Iranian. If it was, if you found it and maybe your data was gone, or maybe you found it before, it was Chinese. And if you found out about it through the news or the FBI, it was Russian. Like that was how attribution worked 15 years ago.
I would say closer to 20 now, old man.
Listen,
I think that does it a disservice.
It does
to an immense degree. It's the same thing, where if it was a smash and grab thing, it was clearly PRC actors that were doing something,
and right?
you came into it with that bias, and now I think that playing field has become so leveled, even with non-state actors. When you look at ransomware groups like Cloud that are leveraging 0 days regularly, it's attribution. At some point, and this is another talk for a different show. And I'm curious, you can chime off in the comments, tell me I'm wrong. Attribution doesn't really matter that much in the private sector to most people, as much as they want it to.
Well, apparently it can't be concrete.
It can't be concrete.
I would just say that
if you were in the room, sure.
If I'm listening to this right now, if I'm reading this, and I'm an organization that has ever had to deal with IRGC or any sort of kitties, Persian or otherwise, I would be interested, or I would certainly be brushing up on my TTPs of what groups have been attributed, whether or not correctly or not, to Iranian actors before. Because in my experience, a lot of times when you see something like this, they start, basically flailing outwards to try to make bigger noise away from that, right? So at least for me, that was kind of the, like, why do I care about this? A, it's really cool. And B, if I'm concerned about Iranian actors, I might want to be a little bit more hyper aware today.
Well, that's the thing. These are not Iranian state actors, though, right? These are actors that are targeting the Iranian state.
That we know of. We don't really know who they are.
Right.
It could be a false flag by the Iranian government to attack itself.
Hey, dog.
Public
I heard
opinion.
you like your IRGC and your
Oh,
IRGC.
man. See,
Who knows?
Maybe
Yeah.
attribution does matter. If you're attacking yourself, then you can
But
do
I think
attribution.
there are cases where attribution matters, and I guess that's a talk for another day. But I do see what you're saying. There are
I'm telling you
cases
right
where
now, Audra, we're never doing all attribution matters show. That's just it's inappropriate.
is it inappropriate? Is it too spicy
Too
of a
racy.
topic?
Too racy.
Okay. Well,
Next
let's move
subject.
on
Next
then to
subject,
our.
Audra. You're being
Okay.
canceled.
Let me share this article. This is the latest information with the MOVEit saga, right? So we're seeing more fallout. Of course, more organizations come forward as confirmed victims, including UCLA, Siemens Energy, among the latest confirmed in this attack, which was carried out by Clop ransomware, which Mick, you just mentioned. They've leveraged several 0 days at this point to, rapidly compromise a number of organizations that use file transfer services. And this latest one is MOVEit. There was also the Excellion data breach and then the Go Anywhere, which were both 0 days leveraged by Clop to target a whole bunch of organizations. And for this specific attack with MOVEit, we've now seen reports of anywhere from 108 to 128 organizations that have either disclosed that they are victims or they've been listed on the Clop leak site. And Brett Callow, who is a threat analyst at MSISoft, has done a great job of tracking this. If you want to follow him on Twitter, it's a great source to try to keep up with as new companies come out and confirm this. And by his count, he has at least 108 organizations impacted. There's at least I think nearly 15 million Americans, he said, whose data has been compromised in these attacks, which leveraged a SQL injection vulnerability. There were actually several of these vulnerabilities that ended up being found in this file transfer service. And we also are hearing of several, I think at least 3 that I've seen, proposed class action lawsuits that have been filed against MOVEit for their security practices in the lead up to this. So, but when you're talking about 0 days, I mean, of course, when Clop started exploiting this, it had been publicly disclosed, but they were apparently sitting on this since, 2021? Yeah. So when you're talking about 0 days, it's very difficult as an organization to defend against that if you're not even aware that the vulnerability exists. So
full disclosure to all the, Gabby would like to know his Twitter account. I assume
yes.
Hello.
Yeah, I think so. Let me double check. Yes.
Yeah. So full disclosure, everyone listening today, this is a very controversial subject in our pre-show briefing. It's something that we've been talking about quite a bit for a while around MOVEit. And I find it fascinating because there's an aspect of grumpy old men on the cloud who've, what was it you said? I'll let you finish, Audra. Audra had a very good turn of phrase here that basically said Mick and I are emotionally dead inside. And she isn't wrong.
Case hardened is the word they use
Yeah.
to describe like police officers or attorneys who deal with too many horrendous cases, and then they become hardened to it, which makes them less
empathetic. I mean,
yeah,
and you're
empathetic,
100%
exactly.
Right. Like,
I prefer wizened.
Wizened?
I mean,
no,
you look wizened.
Like the sun.
You look wizened. I've often thought to myself, that's a man who spent way too much time in the sun.
That's exactly it.
I don't think you're wrong. You said that, Audra, and it kind of struck a nerve on me in a good way and a bad way, right? But it's partly because I hear 15 million and I think, okay, I've had 13, I have 13 credit rating services at this point. Like, God, it sounds horrible. Does losing personal data matter anymore?
Well,
yes, because of the principle.
The principle.
Oh,
the principle.
The principle.
The principle of okay. There's no.
You can't just give up.
Yeah,
you can't have a defeatist attitude. It matters.
It's not a defeatist attitude, but until there is legislation, an identity privacy policy that gets passed or legislation passed at a federal level, we're going to keep having the same circular arguments. Now, I looked at it from there are how many people in America right now? What, 370 million?
I don't know. A lot.
I haven't checked COVID recently.
2.3 billion? No, 7.6. Well, half of that's voting age. Like 15 million is not really a lot of people considering these organizations are global. The thing that doesn't, it's a lot. It's a target list that keeps growing, but there wasn't an active exploit to any of these victims. When we say victims, it's just their data was compromised and it was taken from the network. So there's been no malicious activity on these victims' networks, it's that their data was compromised. This would be akin to, let's say, an Anthem getting breached or something like that, or an OPM getting breached. We're going to find out more victims as they keep getting released. I think, to me, it kind of highlights Well, if your plan was just to take all this data, that was a stupid plan.
Can we just stop for a second and remember here that Audra just, I believe, posted the population of the United States and then had quite the cheeky smile of like, nailed it, 333 million.
Google.
Done. 334.
That's from the census, if anyone's wondering.
You can trust
What
us.
did I say?
Yeah.
And
I also want
to.
Yeah, it's a lot. 334 million. So yeah, 17 million Americans is a smaller.
You have to say it like you're in rent though. You can't say it like that.
It's 500.
There you go. 334, 956 million. 15 million lost their data today.
We should just have like a counter. No, that's
credit monitoring.
Because it does get to a point where people they don't care. The first answer is, well, why do I care? What does anyone care with my data, right? But people should care because data privacy matters. It is the principle. At the very least, care about the principle of it.
I mean, that's what's important.
Yes. I also want to mention what Laura Blystone mentioned in the comments about attribution. She says it matters to the threat intel team, but a SOC analyst probably doesn't care. So that's a good point too, with different positions and points of view. Who cares about what in different scenarios?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I do 100%
down, like, because people want to know where they got hurt and who hurt them, and that's where it gets kind of ridiculous.
Chaotic.
I do see a lot of the folks in the threat intel space that care about attribution specific to their area of responsibility and only their area of responsibility.
Yeah,
you know, and those blinders happen often. You know, where it's not this group.
And Laura, it is extra chaotic today because we don't have a producer, so we have no one reining us in.
It's been a weird day. Things happening.
But it's okay. We're just rolling with it. Yeah.
Rolling with it. Rolling.
Exactly. So yeah, that is the news for today. I think we have some upcoming events. Oh no, we don't. We don't have the graphic.
We have no upcoming events.
We don't have That's okay.
But wait, one more plug
we
to keep it on MOVEit for a while because
right?
we want to talk about MOVEit as much as we could. The threat research
team.
Oh,
right. That's the other thing that we need to share. Yes.
About the MOVEit, you know, the attack and the analytic stories there. They'll update with any new information that comes out. But the reason why I was kind of poo-pooing on it because it doesn't look like there's been new technical information that's come out on it.
Yeah.
It's still unfolding though. That's
still unfolding. I mean,
it's where we disagree.
People were, yeah.
Let me find the threat research link. It might take me a minute to find that.
Well, you're doing that. We do have some events coming up, very specifically, .conf.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You know, we got some things happening there. Dr. Fetterman will be presenting on the peak threat hunting framework on Tuesday, I believe. Along with, I think actually I will be co-sitting for David Bianco there. I think David's not able to make it. So once again, I'll be giving a keynote on Monday evening. We're going to be doing basically a coffee talk every day or something like that, right?
Every day there is going to be an episode with our smiling faces or some portion of our smiling faces. There is a book panel. If you haven't gotten your copy of Blue Nomicon, come on out to Conf and get one and hang out in Vegas for a week, I guess.
Yeah, perfectly reasonable.
Sure. But we're going to have a book panel with, I believe, Jason Lee is going to hang out, and Paul Kurtz is going to be there, and Sydney Howard. We're going to hang out and have a little
show. She had a wonderful interview a couple weeks ago, right, Audra?
I'm sorry, who?
She made such an impact.
Wow.
Hey, I'm sorry, who are we talking about? I was reading.
Sydney Howard.
Oh, Sydney. Yes, Sydney had a great interview. We talked about threat hunting and her career and how she goes into a hunt, what her thought process is, which I thought was really cool. Because it's like, where do you find the inspiration on how to focus, right? Because there's so many different things you can look at when you're threat hunting.
Shows like this.
So sorry I wasn't paying attention. I was trying to catch up with all of our links. So
when Ryan and I
but I'm caught up now. I shared
I'm tired of you too.
Yeah, I shared the threat research link in there. So
you can share this as well. But this is some big news that's just happened. Where is it? Let's figure this out.
Oh my God! I see what you're trying to do here.
I'm trying. We'll see if it works.
I can get the link ready.
Big effing news, Audra. What have you and Kirsty done? What
we have a podcast. Ryan surprisingly let us put a podcast together, and hopefully is still on board with that decision. But we did release our first episode on June 12th. So this is called the Security Detail, and it's basically about cyber threats by industry. So each episode is a different vertical. So we started with the public sector. We interviewed Paul Kurtz, whose cybersecurity career began at the White House in the early 2000s. So he had a really interesting perspective about how cybersecurity has evolved since then and what the top threats of today are. We also have another episode that just came out featuring Ian Keller, who is a former CISO and a cybersecurity advisor. I believe he's based out of Saudi Arabia currently. And he does a lot of work with the telecommunications sector. So he was able to speak to that, and especially APT operations targeting telecommunications, because it is such.
What's kind of the format here? Do you guys just
Sure. So we have interviews. So we'll talk at the beginning, Kirsty and I, just about our own experience and knowledge, maybe some interesting data points about that particular industry, and then we'll dive into the interview for about 15 minutes with whoever our interview guest is. And then we have a I'm the CISO, I Say So segment, which is brilliant, and Kirsty came up with that. And it's where we ask the interview guest what they would mandate if they were a CISO in that particular field, and a lot of really interesting answers for that. And then we also have our takeaways at the end, what our big takeaways were from that interview. So hopefully people find it interesting, because I think we have quite a few interesting people lined up.
Yeah, we got this. You can download it directly. We are eventually working on Apple, but it's on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Podchaser. And then that's not the only thing that we're looking at there as well, right? You've actually done some hard work recently. For those, we've actually had this come up quite a bit, people asking around this, right? People wanted Coffee Talk with Serge on a, not just on YouTube. So now you can download these. Shannon Davis, who works for us very specifically, wanted to listen to this while he was bicycling. So yeah,
that's
I think
where the idea came.
Yeah, all 55, 60 episodes are now backlogged, right?
Yeah, we have all of our episodes. I have to upload last week's, but that'll be today. So by the end of today, we'll have everything uploaded, and it'll be a good place to listen if you want to catch up on any of the interviews we have. Every other week we'll have an interview for Coffee Talk, so it's a great place to listen to those, and then also listen to us ramble. So
never we're succinct. We're on target.
We're very succinct in our logic.
Yes, come up with every performance review I've ever had, like that Ryan Kovar guy. He is succinct.
I don't do KPIs. I just do KP. I just keep the brevity and all over it. Just
There we go. I was like, Kovar performance? No. Kirsty? No. Oh, key performance. There we go. All right. So many Ks. So charity with that, challenge? I think are we at charity challenge?
We are.
Sure. Okay. This is going to go great because I prepped really well.
Wait, do we?
And now, Splunk Cybersecurity 60-second charity challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck. Well, there we go.
I was gonna say, do we have a timer?
No, but I can hold my phone up if you want to do it that way.
I got the timer. I know how to do it. We're good.
Wait,
do you? I'll have a backup. Okay, just in case.
Apparently, I know how to do a timer, not just can't figure out how to do it simultaneously.
Yeah. Do you want me to just do this? Because you can easily see when I hit 60.
Let's see.
Does that work?
Well, we'll figure it out. There we go. Audra, I'm going to try to work on something here. Why don't you talk about what we're doing today?
Oh, we have to do the charity. We were just reminded in the chat. We can't ever remember to name the charity first.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, LinkedIn user, because that's what I see.
Thank you for reminding
LinkedIn user 37.
Because we always forget. So our charity this week is Trans Lifeline, which is a national trans-led organization dedicated to improving the quality of trans lives by responding to the critical needs in their community and with advocacy and education. So that is the charity that we are donating to this week. And the topic, which I think I'm really interested to hear what you both have to say about this, So there was a Guardian article, which I will share as well, which quotes the Australian Prime Minister saying that residents there should turn off their phone every night for 5 minutes as a cybersecurity measure. And so I guess the thought behind this is that if you reboot your phone periodically, it could forcibly close applications and processes that could be monitoring you or collecting your data. But I guess my question for the challenge is if you think that that's necessary, or is that an overkill for cybersecurity? Are there better things people can do for securing their mobile devices? What's your take on that advice? Is it good advice? So with that, should I get the timer ready just in case over here?
Yeah, I can't figure it out this fast. Like I said, without a producer, we're pretty much just down to basics. So hopefully, Lara, you'll be okay with the chaos once again.
Yes.
Mick, as a continual loser, but more importantly, your boss, I'm going to say, why don't you go first today?
And maybe before we get started, we'll let everyone know that they can help us vote, because I don't want to take the brunt of Ryan's wrath when he doesn't win. If he has a chance, he might win. But
He has a chance. Oh,
I don't want it to be on me.
I love the pity vote there. Thank you, Audra. Just lovely.
Anyway,
What I needed today.
Yep.
All
Vote
right.
for who has the
You're
best
on,
answer.
are you just soliloquying without noise there, Mick? Or we can't hear you.
Oh,
There you go. Now you're back.
Okay, is that better?
Do you
Yeah.
normally have a producer in your house too? This is fun. Okay.
It's a cat, so same.
All right. Let's
Are you
go.
ready?
Audra, hit it.
Okay, so as President Biden once said, as one computer said, if you're on the train and they say portal bridge, you know you better make other plans. So compared to that, I really appreciate the Australian Prime Minister's comments. Very succinct, very clear. So I think more than that, just rebooting your phone and keeping it off for 5 minutes, it should be just a minute, doesn't matter. Develop a whole cyber routine. So let me throw in a bunch of Australian references. So it is a true blue Aussie responsibility. And the private sector, just like your footy team, has to step up. So turn your phone off for 5 minutes, reboot it during the day, brush your teeth, secure your digital life. It's going to be doing the same thing. Updates, privacy setting, dodgy emails. Keep your computers clean from infection like a koala in a sanctuary. So spread the word, fight cybercrime together, raise your stubbies, and protect those digital shores. So password strong, may the cyber gods be with you. That's pretty much the reason why you should keep it. It's just a good habit to get into.
He's 2 seconds over, loses by default. I don't even have to
I
go.
can't see the timer.
That's okay.
You
You
can
should have just
see it. It's
known.
right. Is it backward, or can you read it on your end?
I mean, it's Australian, so it's.
I can't tell.
It counts
Okay.
down.
All right. Ryan, are you ready?
This is not going to go well, as I said. However, I'm going to do the best I can.
Okay.
So when I look at these words from the Prime Minister, there's a couple things that I think are very confusing for the general populace. One, he's describing how to personally secure your mobile device by using a threat model of turning it off for 5 minutes. Now, the reason I can assume that he's saying doing that without really digging into any of the classified reporting, etc., is a concept of malware or other sort of things happening on your computer, on your phone, that needs to be completely shut down so it goes out of any onboard memory. Just like they always say, turn off your router for a couple minutes because you have capacitors that are keeping the power going, keeping the memory, the processing, all that sort of stuff. So I find it a little confusing. I think it really comes down to what is your personal threat model when you're looking at your mobile phone for security. In this case, you're blowing my mind, Audra. In this case, what he's saying is by turning your phone off, you're not going to have this malware, or it's going to reduce the threat. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's probably other opportunities, but it is a very low cost, low effort way to possibly increase your security. But I think just as we're talking about it and a little bit mocking today, it's going to cause more confusion than help.
Awesome. Perfect timing. You saw my Twitter notifications.
And thank God it was just Twitter, not him.
No.
There we go.
All right. With that in mind, who wants to weigh in on
I don't know. We're not
the
getting
winner?
a lot of,
You can just type a name in the chat so that I don't
type a
have
name
to.
that starts with R, ends with N, starts with K, ends with R. Nothing. Not getting a lot of here. It's I mean, we do have a delay as always, but we'll wait patiently.
Or it's just
Have to take it all
Audra,
in.
what are your thoughts?
There's a lot of Australian references.
Audra, let's go in. Audra, you're the one who tends to care much more about personal privacy. What were your thoughts on this? Larry, you don't count. You obviously voted for Mick.
Yeah, because I had a President
But
Biden
Ryan, you
quote in
gotta
there.
vote.
Who did not what President
You gotta
Biden said
vote.
about
I got a
computers?
pity vote there. Ryan was within time.
It's not a pity vote.
Quality of not quality, just you know. There you go.
Oh, Dario has some great advice.
Dario,
Cycling
Honestly,
your
I
phone
think keeping
every
your
month.
phone off for 5 minutes, it's probably just to keep his kids off their phone for 5 minutes.
Oh, thanks, Gabby. That's Charlie in the back taking a nice nap while we just talk.
Like the persistence thing, I'm trying to understand in this context, because malware that establishes persistence would be clean in a reboot. 5 minutes off wouldn't matter, and the malware that can survive that reboot would survive that 5 minutes.
Would you say that malware would be an advanced and persistent threat to your phone?
And then that's where you bring the question of threat modeling, because who is an APT targeting you?
I mean, those are the
You have
folks that
reason
would
to
have that
believe?
level of malware.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you have reason to believe you're being targeted by advanced adversaries?
definitely not a Western state that would have that capability. I tell you that.
I mean, NSO group like this would not have stopped their work.
Right.
NSA group. What
NSO.
But the Apple updates do. So that's why it's important to always update your phone, right? When you have the updates to stay
There
on
you
top
go.
of those.
I mean, right
Working
now,
at the
Audra,
White
you're going to have
House.
to pick. It's split between I was within time, so technically I won.
Gosh, this is so hard because I think Mix was really hilarious. Like koala references. Like, I don't know how you come up with this stuff, but it's really funny. But I also, I'm going to go with Ryan this week, and it's not a pity vote.
It's 100% a pity vote.
It's not a pity vote. I think you both have great points, and it was a very close call. Yes. But I do think that cycling your phone, like what Dario said, it doesn't hurt. It might be something to just make a habit of doing every now and then, but I don't think it's like
it's
the most important thing for
theater at
security.
best.
Yep. Dario also voted for Ryan. So now you know it's not a pity vote. You have people that are voting for you. So
wow, Laura's vote just doesn't count as all. All right. Blystone just gets no love from her co-workers. They're like, oh, you work here. Your vote doesn't count. I see how it is.
No, she doesn't work here, Mick. She's one of the many thousands of people who watch this every week who just tunes in for our incredibleness and sometimes your humor. That's,
Sometimes.
Man. Yeah, when you prepare and write a script, you can be very funny.
Okay, we're already 45 minutes in, so we need to move on to our deep dive.
See, this is what happens when we don't have a producer in the background. Yes. So with that, let's do a very quick deep dive once I find
the video.
And now we talk about things that just happen to be on our minds with who's ever here, because we made this up before I knew who'd accept my meeting invite. All right. So let's have a faster deep dive than we had for the news articles.
Okay, let me share this article here.
We're not going to go find the Titanic today, that's for sure.
This is an article by The Record about the Senate's annual defense policy bill, which would include a requirement for the Department of Defense to study the viability of creating a seventh cyber-specific military branch. And the Senate Armed Services Committee approved the bill last Thursday. This was actually an amendment added to the bill, kind of last minute, it seems like. So it'll be interesting to see the exact wording of how that looks. But in the past, there hasn't really been much traction with getting a specific branch of the military, because we have the U.S. Cyber Command, right? And they typically draw resources from the current military branches. And there is, I guess, some concern that if they created another military branch, then it could either make the other branches care less about cybersecurity, or it could also free them up to focus on other things. If they're, having to help out U.S. Cyber Command, it could actually free up their resources. So there's different arguments for and against adding a branch. But, with cyber becoming it's a domain of war, right? Like it's a major component to defending, national security and whatnot. So what do you make of this? Do you think that there should be another branch devoted to cyber?
Well, every time we've created a new branch of the military, it's always just really helped define those lines. If you look at the Air Force, perfect example, we immediately got rid of the second largest Air Force in the world, which was in the U.S. No, we didn't.
The Marines also super. Yep.
Yeah, we didn't do. Oh, and when we got Space Force, the U.S. Air Force immediately dropped. No,
So I think my biggest issues were I still don't know who the Coast Guard works for. So if anyone in the comments can
We
help,
figured this out during
it
time of
was
war.
DOD, or is it though? Like, who do they work for today?
It's on the DoD website when you go
It's
to
on the DHS website too.
Well, then maybe it's both.
They work for
Why
I
not
think the
both?
bigger issue for me was the National Guard, because I don't think that counts. But
Ooh, not associated
Spicy.
with that comment. I, for one, welcome their support.
I welcome their support as well. I'm just going to give you a hard time about it. But I don't think it's going to say, hey, Air Force, we stood up a new branch, stop cybering. Like, when you look at places like Cyber Command, they're mostly joint task force anyway, right? They're comprised of members from the individual forces.
Interesting. The DoD's website lists military units, and it does not include. So for military units, it's just Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force.
I mean, for a long time during World War II, the U.S. Coast Guard, other than the U.S. Navy, had more fatalities from combat than any other force, right? So let's just put the Coast Guard, first off, they do more every day than just about anyone I can imagine. Those guys are badasses. So we'll put that aside. If we look at the actual purpose of creating a cyber command, to me, the reason I see the value in it is honestly from a personnel point of view. In today's military, like when I look at Cyber Command, when I looked at my own career in the Navy, when we look at folks like Drew Church, who is an active duty, he's a reservist today who wants to focus on cyber. There is a detrimental aspect. I know the Navy better, as says Mick. If you want to stay in the Navy and you want to be successful in your promotion path in your career, you have to be a sailor first and a technical expert second. And at a certain point of your career, which is when I got out of the Navy, you have to make that decision of, do I want to be a technical expert or do I want to be a sailor? And I would have had to stop being a cybersecurity person, stop being an IT person, and really worry about buckets and mops and making sure
the
that
Navy has ships and you're expected to be on one for the majority of your career.
Exactly.
That's just kind of what you signed up for.
Yep.
It's kind of made clear to you, but the very glaring level of how clear that is, you don't know until about a year or two in. So, I get it now.
So I think there's value in this, right? Because it allows people to focus on what they want to do and continue a personal career growth within the military, focusing on something that changes every day.
I agree with you completely. However, I don't think it's going to remove the cyber element. Going back to the Navy is what I know. Like, I get it. Everything's behind Doden, but individual branches will still need that cybersecurity support. You can't just rely on an upstream provider, right?
I mean, the Army has close air support still. They still have Apaches. They still have Blackhawks. I think the biggest debate we often see for the U.S. military, at least, is the debate around A-10 Warthogs being out of date for the U.S. Air Force's mission, but still an essential part of the U.S. Army's ability to produce.
They look super cool. So,
are you a U.S. senator who keeps creating packages to keep folks employed? It looks cool, but it doesn't work for the U.S. Air Force. So
not at all.
I don't think cyber is going to go away from independent commands, but I think things like Cyber Command, as in we are targeting the U.S., like we are defending the nation's cyber capabilities, needs to be a separate entity.
And I guess we haven't seen cyber as a major component during wartime, right? And that's something with the war in Ukraine that was right for the U.S. perspective of getting involved. And I think that's something that could definitely change the narrative in terms of the importance of having an actual branch devoted to this. But then again, we have a Space Force, and that has not been a component of war either. But you could very well imagine how it could
that
be
we know of.
That we know of. So I don't know. I think you have to see how it could play into the future, which no one knows for sure. But I don't know. I could see it being beneficial.
I think after the Russian-Ukraine conflict is over, after the invasion of Ukraine is over, I think a lot of what we know about cybersecurity is going to change, right? In terms of reviewing this from a fifth domain of warfare with combined operations, which, one of the users here, cybersecurity is never important in isolation. Its purpose is to protect or attack something specific. I think that is very true. And I think some of the things we've seen come out of Ukraine is how Russia has utilized its cybersecurity attacks in combination with kinetic and armed operations.
We have seen blended operations for a while in intelligence, right? Where there is a human element in the intelligence gathering part of it and the clandestine part of it. the cyber focus now on the kinetic action, specifically the drone footage alone, to me, changed the face of guerrilla warfare from this point moving forward.
Yeah, and I guess when you look at something that rises to like a hot war, right? That's where you're actually looking for physical destruction, and there are more effective ways to do that than necessarily a cyber attack. I mean, you could argue that, but what we've seen from Russia, Ukraine demonstrates that, right?
If I string up 100 small DJI drones and strap some explosive to them and go that way to an airfield, is that a cyber attack now?
No. But attacking the satellite or the GPS communications or the radio infrastructure via cyber to prevent drone attacks is, in my opinion.
Infrastructure including the physical facility?
No.
Or it would be a cyber enabled attack.
You'd have to be very clear, because it could be very confusing if this branch is created. Like, who is responsible for what, and how do you clarify those roles?
Well, as Ryan and I will tell you for hours on end, the military has clearly defined lanes in the sand that are never ever stepped over by any branch.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the importance of creating this ahead of time, because it would be better to have the branch before you need it, right? It'd be better to create something before it comes to the point where you would wish, oh man, I wish we had that as its separate force. So.
Uh-oh.
Is Ryan frozen?
Well, I think that's our cue.
Yeah, I think that means we've hit our mark. Our platform is telling us it's time to wrap it up. So.
Ryan could just say, you want to disconnect. I get it. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back in, I guess, 2 weeks. No, it's a holiday. You'll be back in 2 weeks.
Wait, next week, right? Or next week's 4th
Next
of
week
July.
is no show. There is no holiday.
Yeah, no show next week. Yeah.
Enjoy the fireworks. And we'll be back on the 11th, I suppose.
Yes, the 11th. So, all right, I'm going to hit the end stream button because I think this ends the stream, but we'll find out.
Yes. Ryan, say goodbye to everyone.
Surge.
Are we off?
I hope. I know. I'm going to pop over to Zoom.
I'm going to just double